London, England, 1815. The ballroom of Almack sparkled with chandeliers and the jewels of society's elite, but His Royal Highness, Prince Xavier Darlington of Westmoreland, saw nothing but shadows. His perfectly tailored evening coat and immaculate cravat belied the disorder of his thoughts as he observed the festivities with detached ennui. "Your Highness," Lady Pembroke simpered, approaching with her daughter in tow, "may I present my Penelope? She plays the pianoforte divinely." Xavier executed a bow of precisely the depth required, no more, no less, and murmured pleasantries while his gaze remained distant. "How fortunate we are to have your presence this evening," continued Lady Pembroke. "We had heard you might not grace London with your company this season." "Indeed, I find little to recommend the endeavour," he replied coolly. "One season bleeds tediously into the next, does it not?" The lady's smile faltered as she shepherded her daughter away, whispering furiously. Lord Fitzwilliam approached, champagne in hand. "Still determined to freeze every hopeful mother in London, I see. They persist in viewing me as some sort of matrimonial prize despite abundant evidence to the contrary," Xavier said, accepting the offered glass. 5 years, Fitz. 5 years of declining every invitation until my solitude at Darlington Hall became so notorious that curiosity has apparently overwhelmed good sense. Caroline's death was a tragedy, but I'll thank you not to mention her name. Xavier's voice held no anger, merely the hollow finality of a tomb door closing. Fitzwilliam sighed. "Very well. Though I suspect you'll find this season different from those you remember." "How so?" "The same insipid conversations, the same transparent machinations, the same—" Xavier stopped abruptly, his attention caught by a figure across the room. She stood apart from the whirling dancers, her posture straight but not rigid, her gown a simple blue silk that whispered of elegance rather than shouting it. While other ladies' hair towered in elaborate confections, hers was styled in a simple chignon, adorned only with a single pearl pin. But it was her expression that arrested him, amusement mingled with keen observation, as though she found the entire proceedings to be a delightful anthropological study rather than the pinnacle of her social ambitions. "Who is that?" Xavier asked, making no effort to disguise his interest. Fitzwilliam followed his gaze. "Ah. Miss Theodora Zanfield. Daughter of the late Dr. Zanfield. The physician." "The very same. Left her comfortably situated but hardly wealthy. She resides with her aunt, Lady Harrington, though I understand she volunteers at St. Bartholomew's Hospital several days each week." Xavier's eyebrows rose. "A lady of quality working among the sick." "Quite scandalous, I'm sure," Fitzwilliam replied dryly. "Though after serving alongside her father during the Peninsular Campaign, I can attest his medical skills were unparalleled. Apparently, the daughter inherited his talents." As if sensing their attention, Miss Zanfield turned. Her eyes, a startling shade of amber, met Xavier's for the briefest moment before she offered a small, correct curtsy and returned to her conversation. "She didn't simper," Xavier said, surprised. "No, I don't believe Miss Zanfield is much given to simpering," Fitzwilliam replied with a laugh. "Would you care for an introduction?" "Absolutely not," Xavier said firmly, turning away. "I merely found her unusual." "As you wish, Your Highness." Fitzwilliam's tone suggested he saw more than Xavier cared to reveal. Xavier took his leave shortly thereafter, but as his carriage rattled through London streets, he found Miss Zanfield's composed features lingering in his mind like an unfinished melody. The following week found Xavier reluctantly attending the Hartwell musical soirée, honouring his promise to his sister, Princess Adelaide, who had insisted his continued absence from society bordered on eccentricity. "It borders on nothing of the sort," he had argued. "It is firmly within the territory of blessed solitude. It is firmly within the territory of melancholy, which does you no credit," Adelaide had countered. "Besides, you needn't marry anyone, Xavier. Simply demonstrate that the royal house of Darlington has not descended into complete misanthropy." Now, enduring a particularly enthusiastic but technically questionable rendition of Mozart, Xavier found his attention wandering. His gaze swept the room and stopped abruptly. Miss Zanfield sat 3 rows ahead, her head tilted slightly as she listened, one gloved finger tapping in perfect rhythm against her program. When the performance concluded, Xavier found himself maneuvering through the crowd, drawn as if by some invisible thread. He approached just as Lord Hartwell's nephew finished speaking to her. "Your Highness," she said, rising gracefully to curtsy. "What an unexpected honor." "Miss Zanfield." Xavier bowed. "I believe we observed each other at Almack's last week, though we were not formally introduced." "Indeed, sir. Though I confess I was surprised to see you there. The gossip columns have declared you a confirmed recluse." "The gossip columns exaggerate," Xavier replied stiffly. "Do they?" "How refreshing to learn they are occasionally," she said, her eye sparkling with subtle mischief. "I had assumed their reports of your disdain for society, your hatred of frivolity, and your general disillusionment with humanity were equally overstated." Xavier found himself momentarily speechless. "You are very direct, Miss Zanfield." "A failing, I'm told," she acknowledged. "My aunt despairs of my ever acquiring the proper degree of circumlocution expected of a lady." "It is unexpected, certainly. As unexpected as a prince attending a musical soirée when he clearly holds no passion for amateur performances." A reluctant smile tugged at Xavier's lips. "I see directness is accompanied by perception. They often travel together, sir." She glanced toward where her aunt was signaling. "I'm afraid I must go. My aunt requires my assistance." "Of course." Xavier bowed. "Perhaps we shall meet again, Miss Zanfield." "Perhaps, Your Highness. Though if the gossip columns are to be believed, the odds are decidedly against it." With a perfect curtsy, she departed, leaving Xavier with the distinct impression of having encountered a summer breeze in the midst of winter. Theodora Zanfield was not in the habit of thinking about princes. Her world consisted of practical matters, assisting at St. Bartholomew's, managing her aunt's increasingly complicated health regimen, and occasionally enduring society events to preserve her tenuous place within the ton. Yet for 3 days following the musical soirée, she found Prince Xavier Darlington intruding upon her thoughts with alarming frequency. "You're distracted today," observed Dr. Morgan as they completed rounds at St. Bartholomew's. "Unusual for you, Miss Zanfield." "Forgive me," Theodora replied, adjusting the bandage on an elderly patient's arm. "I'm perfectly attentive now." "See that you remain so. Mrs. Collins requires careful monitoring. The fever has not yet broken." As they moved to the next bed, a commotion at the hospital entrance drew their attention. 2 footmen in royal livery entered, preceding a distinguished older man who carried himself with military bearing. "Dr. Morgan," the man called. "I require your immediate assistance. There has been an accident." Theodora followed as Dr. Morgan hurried forward. Outside, a magnificent carriage bore the royal crest, its door open to reveal Prince Xavier seated within, his face pale as he cradled his right arm. "Your Highness," Dr. Morgan bowed. "What has happened?" "A carriage overturned on Oxford Street," Xavier explained through gritted teeth. "I was passing and stopped to assist." The situation was unstable. "He means," interrupted the older man, "that His Highness crawled beneath a precariously balanced carriage to extract a trapped child, whereupon the vehicle shifted and crushed his arm before we could pull him clear." "Lord Fitzwilliam exaggerates," Xavier said tightly. "The injury is minor." "Nevertheless, we must examine you immediately," Dr. Morgan insisted. "Miss Zanfield, prepare the private treatment room." Minutes later, Theodora assisted as Dr. Morgan cut away the prince's ruined coat sleeve to reveal an arm grotesquely swollen and misshapen. "A clean break of the radius, Your Highness, and significant soft tissue damage," Dr. Morgan pronounced. "It will require setting and careful monitoring for infection." Xavier's jaw tightened. "Proceed, then." "Miss Zanfield is our most skilled assistant in such matters," Dr. Morgan said. "She will administer laudanum to ease." "No laudanum," Xavier interrupted sharply. "Nothing that clouds the mind." Dr. Morgan hesitated. "The pain will be considerable, sir." "I am aware." "Proceed without it." Theodora met the prince's eyes. Within their grey depths, she saw not arrogance but something deeper, a fear that had nothing to do with physical pain. "As you wish, Your Highness," she said quietly. "But perhaps you might permit me to employ an alternative method my father developed during his military service? It involves pressure points that can dull sensation temporarily without affecting clarity of thought." Something like relief flickered across Xavier's features. "You may try it, Miss Zanfield." Theodora positioned herself beside him, her fingers finding precise points along his uninjured arm and shoulder. "This will feel strange, sir, but focus on your breathing." As Dr. Morgan prepared the necessary splints, Theodora worked methodically, her touch professional yet gentle. Gradually, Xavier's rigid posture eased slightly. "You learned this from your father?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes." He believed pain management need not always require surrendering control. She met his gaze. "Some find that loss of control more frightening than the pain itself." Understanding passed between them, a moment of perfect clarity in which Theodora glimpsed the wounded soul beneath the princely exterior. Then Dr. Morgan moved to set the broken bone, and Xavier's world exploded into white-hot agony. Xavier awoke in unfamiliar surroundings, momentarily disoriented until the throbbing in his arm brought recollection flooding back. He lay on a narrow bed in what appeared to be a private hospital room, his splintered arm resting on a pillow. "Ah, you've rejoined us," came a familiar voice. Turning his head, Xavier found Miss Zanfield seated nearby, a ledger open on her lap. "How long?" he asked, his throat dry. "You lost consciousness when the bone was set," she explained, pouring water from a carafe. "It's been approximately 3 hours. Here, drink this." Xavier accepted the glass awkwardly with his left hand. 3 hours? Surely you have not been here all that time. Not continuously. I've been attending to other patients as well. She closed her ledger. Lord Fitzwilliam has gone to inform your household of your whereabouts. He seemed quite concerned about a meeting you were to attend this afternoon. The diplomatic envoy from Prussia, Xavier muttered. It will have to be rescheduled. I've taken the liberty of writing down instructions for your care, Theodora continued professionally. The break was clean, but infection remains a risk. You'll need to keep the arm immobilized and have the dressings changed daily. By you? The question escaped before Xavier could consider its implications. Theodora's eyebrows rose slightly. That would be highly improper, Your Highness. I'm sure your personal physician is more than capable. Dr. Winters is 73 and his hands shake like autumn leaves, Xavier said dryly. Besides, propriety seems a secondary concern when you've already seen me half-dressed and insensible. A hint of color touched Theodora's cheeks. Nevertheless, it would be most irregular for me to attend you privately. Then attend me publicly. At St. Bartholomew's. You would come to the hospital daily? A prince among the common patients. Is there some reason I should not? Theodora studied him for a moment. Only that it contradicts everything society believes about your character, sir. Perhaps society knows less than it presumes, Xavier replied quietly. Before Theodora could respond, the door opened to admit Lord Fitzwilliam and Dr. Morgan. Your Highness, you're awake! Fitzwilliam exclaimed. Thank God! Your sister is beside herself with worry. Adelaide always worries excessively, Xavier said, though his tone held affection. Dr. Morgan, I understand I'm indebted to your skill. And to Miss Zanfield's, the doctor replied. Her pressure point technique allowed us to complete the setting with minimal distress to your system. Indeed. Xavier's gaze returned to Theodora. I find myself increasingly indebted to Miss Zanfield's talents. Theodora rose gracefully. If you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I have other patients requiring attention. Your Highness, remember to keep the arm elevated and I shall return tomorrow for examination, Xavier interrupted. At what hour might you be available? A momentary hesitation, then, 10 o'clock, sir. But I must insist your valet accompany you for propriety's sake. 10 o'clock, Xavier confirmed. "Good day, Miss Zanfield." After she departed, Fitzwilliam gave a low whistle. "Well, well. How fascinating." "What is fascinating about requiring medical attention, Fitz?" Xavier asked irritably, struggling to sit up. "Nothing whatsoever," his friend replied with a knowing smile. "Nothing whatsoever." True to his word, Prince Xavier appeared at St. Bartholomew's the following morning, causing a minor sensation among patients and staff alike. Theodora received him in the same private treatment room, maintaining a professional demeanor as she examined the injury. "The swelling has decreased marginally," she observed, gentle fingers probing the area around the splint. "Are you managing the pain adequately?" "It is tolerable," Xavier replied, studying her concentrated expression. "Which means it is considerable, but you're too stubborn to admit it," Theodora translated, reaching for a small jar. "This contains willow bark and other analgesics. Apply it around the splint area but not directly on the wound. You're very forthright in your assessments, Miss Zanfield." "Would you prefer I coddle you with platitudes, Your Highness?" Xavier's lips twitched. "God, no. I receive enough empty flattery to last several lifetimes." "Then we understand each other," Theodora said, rebandaging the arm with efficient movements. "You needn't return tomorrow unless you notice increased pain or redness. 3 days hence will be sufficient for the next examination." "I see. And if I were to call at Lady Harrington's residence tomorrow to inquire after your aunt's health? I understand she suffers from respiratory complaints that my mother's physician once treated successfully." Theodora paused, her hand stilling. "That would be most unexpected, sir. Yet not unwelcome, I hope." Their eyes met, and Theodora found herself unable to look away from the unexpected vulnerability in his gaze. "My aunt would undoubtedly be honored," she said carefully. "And her niece?" Theodora tied off the bandage before responding. "Her niece would be curious about your Highness's sudden interest in respiratory ailments." "Perhaps her niece inspires curiosity in general," Xavier replied softly. The charged moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Theodora stepped back as Xavier's valet entered to assist him with his coat. "Until tomorrow, Miss Zanfield," Xavier said, bowing as properly as his injured arm allowed. "Until tomorrow, Your Highness," Theodora replied, wondering why her heart had accelerated to such an unseemly pace. Over the next fortnight, London society buzzed with extraordinary rumors. Prince Xavier, the notorious recluse, had suddenly become sociable. He had been seen at the theatre, at a botanical exhibition, and most shockingly, escorting Lady Harrington and her niece through Hyde Park on 2 separate occasions. "It's incomprehensible," declared Lady Pembroke to her circle at Lady Ashton's tea reception. "That Zanfield girl is pretty enough, I suppose, but hardly remarkable. No fortune to speak of, and then there's the shocking matter of her hospital work." "Perhaps His Highness appreciates her medical knowledge," suggested Mrs. Witherspoon. "After his accident, medical knowledge?" Lady Pembroke scoffed. "What gentleman seeks a wife for such a peculiar attribute? No, there must be some other explanation. Perhaps Lady Harrington has employed some devious stratagem." Unbeknownst to the gossips, the actual explanation was both simpler and more complex. With each meeting, Xavier found himself increasingly drawn to Theodora's combination of intelligence, compassion, and refreshing honesty. Their conversations ranged from literature to politics to medicine, and never once did she defer to his opinion merely because of his rank. For Theodora, the prince's company revealed layers she had never anticipated: his dry wit, his genuine concern for his subjects, the depth of knowledge that belied his reputation for disinterest in intellectual pursuits. Yet beneath their growing friendship lay an unspoken awareness of the impossibility of anything more. A prince, even a younger son like Xavier, was expected to make a politically advantageous match. A physician's daughter who spent her days among the sick was hardly a suitable consort, regardless of her distant connection to nobility through her aunt. This reality hung between them as Xavier's carriage carried them back from a musical performance at Lord Sutherland's home, Lady Harrington having dozed off in the opposite seat. "You were unusually quiet this evening," Xavier observed, his voice low to avoid waking the older woman. Theodora gazed out the window at the passing street lamps. I was considering the final movement of the concerto. The resolution seemed forced, discordant elements suddenly harmonizing without proper development. A musical criticism or a broader philosophical observation? Xavier asked, studying her profile in the half-light. Theodora turned to meet his gaze. Perhaps both. Some tensions cannot be resolved by simply declaring them resolved, can they? You speak in riddles tonight. Do I? Theodora sighed. Forgive me. I received a letter from Dr. Morgan today. He has offered me a more formal position at St. Bartholomew's, overseeing the women's ward. That's wonderful news, Xavier said, though his expression tightened. Your talents would be properly utilized. It would require more of my time. I would have less availability for social engagements. The carriage jolted slightly, bringing them momentarily closer. Xavier's uninjured hand moved as if to cover hers, then withdrew. I understand, he said quietly. Your work is important to you. It is all I have ever wanted, Theodora confirmed. To continue my father's legacy of care. Then you must accept the position. You think so? I know so, Xavier said firmly. Talent such as yours should not be squandered. Theodora studied him for a long moment. Even if it means our friendship must necessarily diminish. Xavier's jaw tightened. I would never stand between you and your calling, Miss Zanfield. The formality stung after weeks of increasing familiarity. Before Theodora could respond, Lady Harrington stirred. Are we arrived? Oh dear, I must have nodded off. How terribly rude of me. As the carriage stopped before Lady Harrington's townhouse, Xavier assisted both ladies to alight, his movement stiff despite his healing arm. I shall be unavailable in the coming weeks, he said with careful neutrality. Diplomatic matters require my attention. Of course, Your Highness, Theodora replied, matching his tone. I understand perfectly. But as the carriage pulled away, she found that understanding did nothing to ease the curious hollow sensation spreading beneath her ribs. Xavier kept his word. For 3 weeks, he withdrew entirely from society, citing diplomatic obligations that kept him either closeted at the palace or attending closed meetings at various embassies. In truth, while such meetings did occur, they occupied far less time than he implied. The remainder he spent at Darlington Hall, his country estate, ostensibly reviewing estate matters but actually engaged in what Fitzwilliam bluntly termed sulking on a grand scale. It's not sulking to recognize reality, Xavier said as they rode along the estate's perimeter. Miss Zanfield has her path, I have mine. They do not converge. They seem to be converging quite nicely until you abruptly retreated, Fitzwilliam observed. The lady appeared genuinely affected by your company. As a friend, perhaps. Nothing more. Is that what you wish to be? Her friend. Xavier's silence was answer enough. My God, Fitzwilliam said softly. You love her. Don't be absurd, Xavier snapped, urging his horse forward. I admire her intellect and respect her dedication to healing. That is all. Of course, Fitzwilliam agreed, too readily. And I'm considering becoming a monk. Xavier shot him a withering glance. This conversation is over. As you wish, Your Highness. Though I feel compelled to mention that Lady Ashton's ball occurs tomorrow evening, and I happen to know Miss Zanfield will be in attendance. Your point being? Merely that if a gentleman wished to see a lady while maintaining the appearance of coincidental meeting, such an event would provide the opportunity. Xavier's expression remained impassive, but Fitzwilliam noted with satisfaction that their route back to the house was suddenly more direct, as if someone had appointments to keep. Lady Ashton's ballroom blazed with hundreds of candles, illuminating the cream and gold decor and the jewels adorning society's elite. Theodora stood with her aunt, greeting acquaintances while trying to ignore the hollow disappointment that had accompanied her for weeks. You're moping, my dear, Lady Harrington observed. Most unbecoming. I'm not moping, aunt. I'm merely tired. The new position at St. Bartholomew's is demanding. "Whom? And your exhaustion has nothing to do with the conspicuous absence of a certain royal gentleman." Theodora stiffened. "His Highness has diplomatic obligations, as we discussed." "Indeed. So diplomatic he couldn't manage a single note or visit in 3 weeks." Before Theodora could formulate a suitable reply, a ripple of whispers spread through the ballroom. She turned to see Prince Xavier standing in the entrance, resplendent in formal evening attire, his now healed arm no longer in a sling. Her heart performed an entirely undignified leap before she schooled her features into polite indifference. "How fortuitous," Lady Harrington remarked innocently. "I do believe I see Lady Pembroke signaling me. You'll be fine alone for a few moments, won't you, my dear?" Before Theodora could protest, her aunt had glided away, leaving her conspicuously solitary as Xavier made his way through the crowd, accepting greetings but clearly moving with purpose. "Miss Zanfield," he said, bowing when he reached her. "You look well." "As to you, Your Highness," she replied, curtsying. "Your arm appears fully recovered. Thanks to excellent medical care." His eyes held hers. "Though I believe I missed my final examination. The body has remarkable healing capabilities when properly supported," Theodora said, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the warmth spreading through her chest at his proximity. "I trust diplomatic matters were resolved satisfactorily." A shadow crossed Xavier's face. "Some matters are never truly resolved, merely accommodated." "I see." An awkward silence fell between them, filled with unspoken questions. "I understand congratulations are in order," Xavier said finally. "Dr. Morgan speaks highly of your work in the women's ward." "Thank you. It's challenging but rewarding." "I never doubted it would be." Another silence. Around them, the ball continued, couples danced, matrons gossiped, eligible young ladies cast hopeful glances toward potential suitors. Yet Theodora felt as though she and Xavier stood in a bubble of stillness. "Would you care to dance, Miss Zanfield?" Xavier asked suddenly. Theodora hesitated. "Are you certain your arm is perfectly capable of a country dance?" he finished. "Unless you would prefer to refuse." "I would not," she said softly. As they took their places in the set, Theodora felt the weight of curious stares. The prince rarely danced, and never twice with the same partner, until now. The music began, and they moved through the patterns of the dance, hands touching briefly then separating, bodies approaching then retreating, like their conversations of late. "I've missed our discussions," Xavier said as they circled each other. "Have you?" "I had assumed diplomatic matters provided adequate intellectual stimulation. They provided tedium and frustration, primarily." Their hands met again. "Nothing like the stimulation of your company." Theodora felt her cheeks warm. "You flatter me, sir." "I state facts, Miss Zanfield." "A distinction you once appreciated." The dance separated them momentarily as they progressed down the line. When they came together again, Theodora found her composure. "Why did you stay away?" she asked directly. Xavier's step faltered almost imperceptibly. "I thought it best." "For whom?" "For both of us." His voice lowered. "Some paths cannot converge without one being fundamentally altered. And you assumed it would be mine that must change." Theodora challenged, though she kept her tone light for the benefit of nearby dancers. "I assumed nothing," Xavier replied. "I feared everything." The music ended before Theodora could respond. Xavier escorted her from the floor, his expression once again composed. "Thank you for the dance, Miss Zanfield." "Your Highness," she acknowledged with a curtsy. As he walked away, Theodora felt as though something precious had slipped through her fingers, something she hadn't fully recognized until it was gone. 1 week later, a sudden summer downpour caught Theodora as she left St. Bartholomew's. Huddling beneath the hospital's portico, she watched sheets of rain transform London streets into shallow rivers. "May I offer assistance?" She turned to find Prince Xavier standing beside her, seemingly materialized from nowhere, an umbrella in his hand. "Your Highness! What are you doing here?" Currently? Getting wet. He stepped closer, extending the umbrella to shield her. More broadly? I came to see you. Theodora's heart stuttered. Is your arm troubling you? My arm is fine. It's another organ entirely that causes me distress. His grey eyes held an intensity that stole her breath. Would you walk with me, Miss Zanfield? My carriage is just there. Against her better judgment, Theodora nodded. They stepped into the rain, the umbrella providing an intimate space that excluded the rest of London. I owe you an explanation, Xavier said as they walked slowly toward his waiting carriage. And an apology. Neither is necessary, Your Highness. Xavier, he corrected. And both are essential. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. I stayed away because I am a coward, Theodora. The use of her given name sent a shock through her system. I don't understand. 5 years ago, I loved a woman who died in childbirth along with our unborn son, Xavier said, each word clearly painful. We had married in secret, against my father's wishes. When she died, he insisted the marriage be erased, all records destroyed, her existence expunged from official accounts. A prince cannot be seen to fail so spectacularly, you see. Oh, Xavier, Theodora breathed, understanding dawning. I'm so sorry. I swore then I would never love again. Never risk that pain, that loss. His free hand moved to cup her cheek. And then I met you, with your brilliant mind and compassionate heart, and I found myself falling despite every defense. Raindrops splashed around them, but Theodora barely noticed. Why tell me this now? Because I've spent a week trying to imagine my life without you in it, and I cannot. Because I would rather risk everything than continue this half-existence. His gaze searched hers. But I must know, do you feel anything for me beyond friendship? Could you consider a future that would inevitably complicate your career, your independence? Theodora placed her hand over his where it rested against her cheek. I have spent 3 weeks attempting to convince myself that my feelings for you are merely admiration and intellectual respect. And I have failed utterly, she admitted. I love you, Xavier. I did not intend to, but intention seems irrelevant to matters of the heart. Joy transformed his features, erasing years of guarded solitude. Then marry me, Theodora. Marry me and bring your healing skills not just to your patients but to me, to this wounded heart that I thought beyond repair until you showed me otherwise. Your father is old and ill and cares more for my happiness now than for protocol, Xavier said firmly. And even if he objected, I would not yield this time. I will not lose you to fear or duty. Then yes, Theodora said, her eyes shining with tears and rain and joy. Yes, I will marry you, on one condition. Xavier's eyebrow rose. Name it. That I may continue my work at St. Bartholomew's in some capacity. Perhaps not daily, but, my love, Xavier interrupted, smiling, I would have it no other way. Your healing gifts are part of who you are. I would never ask you to abandon them. Then we are agreed, Theodora said, returning his smile. Xavier leaned down, the umbrella creating a private world as his lips met hers in a kiss that promised healing for them both, a new beginning built upon the ruins of the past, stronger for having been broken and mended with care. And as the rain continued to fall around them, neither noticed nor cared, for they had found in each other a shelter more enduring than any umbrella, and a love more powerful than any storm.